And now, the best 60-ish seconds of your week. This was the week of congressional hearings, led off by the Attorney General of the United States, William Barr, who testified before the House Judiciary Committee. He didn't really get a chance to do that much testifying because Democrats on that panel used their opportunity to make televised speeches, sometimes punctuated by a question mark and sometimes just left dangling. When Attorney General Barr went to respond, they'd say, "Wait a minute, I haven't asked you a question," or worse yet, "I reclaim my time," the minute he started to answer. But what did come out of that hearing, in addition to the fact that William Barr performed very, very well under pressure, were two things. One, the video that Jim Jordan, the ranking member on the Republican side, introduced, which showed the carnage, vandalism, and violence taking place in Portland, which the Democrats wanted us not to believe our lying eyes to see. And additionally, the announcement, which came after a question by the Attorney General, that the U.S. Attorney in West Texas is now looking into unmasking. That's certainly something we're going to want to watch. And then came the big four, the tech giants coming in to testify on what presumably were antitrust issues. And you had Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos, who between them have a combined net worth of over $250 billion. Think about that. Something like $280 billion, but who's counting at that point? But for all that money, it didn't really buy them the poise that Bill Barr displayed. They weren't exactly cool under pressure. They could use a little media training from those of us here at Quantum Communications, quite frankly. And it's proof once again that creators aren't necessarily the greatest managers when it comes to being CEOs of major corporations. But in the long run, not many gloves were laid on them, despite their unsteady performance. And Major League Baseball swung back into action last week. And was I missing something? Or were those cardboard fans in the stands what we really were looking for, and piped in music and all sorts of goofy stuff? Just not quite the same, but it's still, they're playing ball. And something else was missing. In the stands of opening night, after having thrown out the first pitch, was Dr. Fauci, minus his mask. Underneath his chin, the woman sitting next to him wearing none, and all three of them huddled up as tightly packed together as you could possibly be in a stadium with no other fans. He said he needed a drink of water, but didn't show a bottle of water in his hand. So, one other piece of baseball thought. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned the fact that on that day, Ty Cobb had hit his 4,000th Major League hit. And I alluded to the fact that only one other Major League player, I didn't mention his name at that point, had ever done that. And that he too belonged in the Hall of Fame. And all you baseball fans know that I was referring to Pete Rose of the Big Red Machine in Cincinnati, and later of the world champion Philadelphia Phillies, who was banned from baseball for things he did off the field. I'm one that always believed that what happened between the lines should determine whether or not you went to the Hall of Fame, but Pete Rose said this week something very interesting. He said, "Those folks that refuse to stand for the national anthem and choose to kneel instead and disrespect our flag and our nation should be banned from baseball." So take it from Pete. And in economic news this week, despite the fact that there were earnings reports all over the place and the Fed was making all sorts of comments, the big item was a really disastrous second quarter report. And it was the worst quarter in U.S. economic history. But despite the fact that it was so bad, it still exceeded the expectations of many market analysts. And despite the fact that the market took a little downturn on Thursday on news of all that, the market still is generating upward generally, and there's some light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to be a long road back, and the economy, the curve is still unknown. It's going to be some time before it gets back to the pre-Wuhan flu lockdowns and shutdowns, and to the economy that the Trump administration, through policies of economic growth and regulatory reform, helped to foster. Finally this week, we mourn the loss of three very significant people. First, Regis Philbin. Who couldn't love Regis? He will be buried, and his funeral mass will be celebrated at the beloved alma mater of his, the University of Notre Dame. I remember going to one of those pep rallies that my friends know I can't miss. When they were held at the Joy Center, it was sold out, and the guard there wouldn't let me in But Regis Philbin said, come on in with me. So I sat with Regis at that pep rally and had a ball. That's just the kind of guy he was. And Olivia de Havilland, passing away at age 104, always remembered for her grace, beauty, and style on the screen, especially in Gone with the Wind. And finally, Herman Cain, who sought the Republican nomination for president once a time, passed away this week as well. A true patriot. He will be sorely missed. And for now, that is the best 60-ish seconds of your week.